if you follow the column of Nonoy on Business World, you'll know that Nonoy is not always the most optimistic of all economists in the country. But I'll force the issue on Nonoy. 2019, let's start off, or at least let's try, on an optimistic note. What's the good news for 2019?
Well, the good news, I think, is on the external side. No? So, in particular, the decline in world oil prices. So, WTI is now $50 to $51 per barrel. That a year ago, that was almost $60 per barrel. And I think that because with the U.S. policy now of pumping up U.S. output, now the U.S. is producing 11.7 million barrels per day, much bigger than. So that will somehow, I think that's the main positive news on the external side. And I think that there will also be a decline in U.S. interest rate. So the cost of doing business globally will decline.
There's no chance that geopolitics will cancel out that additional production from the United States. I mean, as we know, every time the U.S. plays with its own competition with oil, there's always a geopolitical. They're walking a tightrope as well. No chances of geopolitics getting in the way and canceling out that additional supply from the United States, you think?
I do not think so, because like for instance, the probably geopolitics with regards to Iran and Venezuela, they have been occurring for several years now, and they have not really resulted in very drastic jump in oil price, except in first week of October.
Oil will stabilize. There will be some additional supply there, you can see. Now, what about the U.S. economy in general as an external factor?
Well, the U.S. economy will experience a growth of 3% or above for the first time in about 16 years. No? If you remember, it was for the 8 years of hope and change of Mr. Obama, there was not a single year of 3% or higher GDP growth, even after the recovery. So I think it's the first time that after about 15 or 16 years that the U.S. will have that kind of economic growth. And U.S. being the biggest economy in the world, GDP size about $25 trillion, is still the biggest consumer. So if we have a good trade relationship with America, America will be a big buyer of many of our goods and services.
Okay. Other external factors that you think might bode well for our economy? Before I move to, and before I force you to look for good news on the internal front.
I think that, well, the overall, the continuing technological revolution. So I think that on the positive side, in fact, the Department of Tourism is saying it that we're projecting 7 million
tourist arrivals.
Yeah. So with an improvement in global environment, especially in America, we should expect more inbound tourism, and that will be a good news for us.
Yeah, we do have to take note. I mean, the economic performance this entire year basically factors in the absence of Boracay from the tourism scene. Now that I mean, let's talk about tourism. Therefore, now that Boracay is back online, notwithstanding the hiccups of reopening and the reality that it is not yet 100% open for business. Notwithstanding that, what do you see? And if you could expound a bit more on what you see in the tourism sector.
Well, I think that to a certain, if you look at again,
was there before I sorry, but what can you compute already? Can you put a figure on the impact that the closure of Boracay had?
Well, NEDA said that the impact of Boracay is only 0.1% of GDP, so the closure will be. I think that was a very understated, because you're talking about the economy in Boracay. You do not count the airlines, the shipping lines, the RoRo, the economy in Mindoro and in Panay Island that were affected. So I think that the 0.1 it should be bigger than 0.1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, going back to tourism, your prognosis for 2019?
I am optimistic on the climate side because if we follow the climate literature, we have now entered the solar minimum, and we are projecting about massive cooling in America and Europe. And I think many of the people will be going to the tropics. You know, like for example, November, now you have 2 weeks of snow in America. That's horrible. And they have snow until February. I think we'll have so-called climate refugees going to the warm countries.
Okay.
And that will be very good for the tourism sector.
Okay. Okay. Now, we're already here. As we said, we started off this particular segment. I'm forcing you with a leading question on what's good for 2019. You started off with external factors. Let's continue that theme. You think tourism will be good, but fundamentally, what's good about 2019? Do you think?
Well, maybe the elections, no? Because, again, as a background, if you look at the GDP growth of the Philippines, it's actually on the downtrend. 6.9% growth in 2016, 6.6% in 2017, and 6.3% in the first 3 quarters of 2018. So we're in a decline. The good news is that 6.3% is still high.
Yeah.
The bad news is that compared to other neighbors, they have a flat trend or uptrend, while we have a downtrend. So that is, but I think that, and the main reason for that is the household consumption.
And that's a